So Greg Doucette says one set to failure training is too good to be true. He's wrong, and I'm going to prove it to you.
One all-out set to failure, that is all you need. Go to the gym, one set, you're done. Does it sound too good to be true? Yes, well it is, but not for everyone. He is in fact half right. Coach Greg, and one set is all you need. And so when you go to the gym, you should only be doing one set. If you do more, well, it's not good.
So immediately, Greg Doucette starts off by saying proponents of one set to failure training believe that more than one set is not good. This is wrong. More than one set is simply not necessary if it is performed properly with adequate set duration into momentary muscle failure. We've known this ever since we've learned how motor units and muscle fiber is recruited in sequential order based on demand or intensity of contraction. You don't accumulate and fatigue a lot of muscle tissue by doing a lot of volume. This is wrong, and this is just bodybuilding folklore. The way you recruit the maximum amount of muscle tissue and stimulate it is through intensity of effort, or how hard you're pushing your body, or as Dr. Elwood Henneman, a neurobiologist from the 1950s, discovered and explains, intensity of muscular contraction. You want to recruit and stimulate all the muscle you can. It doesn't come down to how many sets, it comes down to how hard you push your body. And this is something that we've known for decades. I think Greg Doucette and many other bodybuilders are completely unaware of this. So if we do one set and we take it to the point where we are contracting as hard as we can, based on the neuroscience that we've known since the late 1930s, this is how you recruit and stimulate all the muscle, not through additional sets, not through additional reps. So right here, Greg is wrong, and he really misunderstands what proponents of one set to failure training are suggesting.
And so Tom Kayat presented the evidence as to why this is true. And so people want to know, what is my opinion? Is he right, wrong, half right, half wrong?
I'm talking about the working set that's going to provide the stimulus for growth. One proper set until failure and then back off.
And so what do I think of this? And so the first thing people are saying, oh, but what about warm-up sets? Well, they don't count. He means one all-out set to failure. That is all you need. Go to the gym, one set, you're done. Does it sound too good to be true? Yes, well it is, but not for everyone. He is in fact half right. If you're a beginner, just started lifting weights, doing one set might in fact be too much. One set taken to failure, for example, squats the first day you go into the gym, all out to failure, guaranteed too hard.
Now here, Greg Doucette says one set to failure for beginners is potentially too much and too hard for them. Here, he is half correct. But what he doesn't realize is that people who are instructing one set to failure or high intensity training use what's called a break-in period. With my clients, for the first couple of weeks, we don't focus on pushing the body hard because their body is very deconditioned and very sensitive to muscular stress. They're not going to need barely anything to get their body to respond. So we don't give them barely anything. We focus on the first couple of weeks performing the exercise as well as possible and getting them in the habit of always performing good form. Now, past this beginner phase, the individual is able to tolerate more intensity and requires more intensity. So the first couple of weeks, we don't train them very hard because training way deep to failure is way more than is necessary to get their body to stimulate. He's partially correct, but he's just really completely unaware of how people approach this style of training.
You should not push yourself to failure because that is going to cause you to be sore. You're simply not ready for it. And so one set is in fact all you need. However, one set, once you're no longer a beginner, it's simply not optimal. One set, all you need for your health, sure. If all you're doing is lifting weights to be healthy, to look okay, then one set, that is in fact enough.
So here again, Greg Doucette is partially right. He is correct that if you just want general overall health and improvement in general physical capacity, one set is all you need. But here's where he's wrong. If you want optimal improvements in muscular strength and size and optimal improvements in functional ability, again, one set is all you need. He thinks that one set is adequate for beginners or people just looking for very minimal improvements in functional strength and functional ability. But believe it or not, the more advanced you get, the less you can tolerate. Think about this. As you perform the exercise over time, your body gets better at it. Your body gets better at inroading, recruiting muscle tissue, and generating stress and fatigue. Also, if you're putting on more muscle tissue, every workout, that's more muscle tissue that is being stressed and fatigued. So what's happening is you're inroading in your recovery ability more over time with the added muscle and the added ability to produce deep, intense contractions and recruit and fatigue muscle. But the thing is, your ability to recover does not improve. So essentially, as time goes on, we're digging a much deeper hole in our functional capacity in the same amount of time to recover from that and climb out of that hole. So when it comes to training intensely, advanced trainees almost always have to reduce their volume as they get stronger, not add more sets and reps as Greg recommends. And this all comes down to, looking at the way these people perform sets. Greg gave an example of how he was performing a set, very low intensity, pretty sloppy, low time under load, short set duration. Well, yeah, if you're performing a set like that, you're obviously going to need more. But if you perform a set like this, one set is not only all you're going to need, it's going to be all that you can tolerate. So keep in mind, you look at a set like what Greg Doucette just did, it probably lasts about 10, 15 seconds. You're not really generating much muscular stress, metabolic stress, tension. But if you do a set like this,
failure, come down slow.
you're going to be a far longer set duration, which means more metabolic stress, more overall demand on your musculoskeletal systems and its supporting systems, a deeper level of inroad and fatigue, just simply condensed into one set. One set performed the high intensity training or one set to failure way is simply a high volume approach, 3, 4, 5 sets, just condensed into one extended set. It doesn't make sense to do a set, take a break, do a set, take a break. These are inexplicable breaks in between loading the muscle and fatiguing it. Simply, the high intensity one set to failure approach is just condensing all this volume into one more extended set, because there really is literally no logical reason to take breaks in between them other than to be able to do more weight. But remember, the purpose of an exercise or the purpose of a workout is not to just see how much weight you can do. It is to use the weight to generate a deep level of inroad and stress in the targeted muscle groups to stimulate an adaptive response. So this is where people get really confused, and it's really because the way they traditionally approach exercise. They approach exercise as, let's go see how many exercises we can mindlessly tolerate. Let's go see how much weight we can do just because, and then hope that muscular stimulation is a side effect. But if you're looking at this from a logical perspective, it wouldn't make any sense to break up that time under load in between sets for the sake of just doing more weight, because guess what? Based on the vast majority of research, the amount of weight you use is irrelevant.
But if you're trying to maximize and optimal your results, this is 100% wrong.
One set is the most logical place to start and see what it does for you.
Exactly. One set, that's the most logical place to start. If you go to the gym, do one set, and you're making gains, keep doing it. Progressive overload. One set, go heavier next time. Add an extra rep. Better mind-muscle connection.
So here, Greg defines progressive overload incorrectly. Progressive overload is not just arbitrarily and randomly adding repetitions or adding load just because. You add load when it becomes necessary to add load, when you start to exceed your target rep range. So say for instance, I choose my target rep range of 8 to 12 repetitions, and I'm going to hit failure somewhere between that rep range, and I'm going to choose a load which allows me to do that. Eventually, I'm going to improve and get stronger to where I can exceed 12 repetitions before I hit failure. That is when you progressively overload. You add a small amount of resistance to stay within your target rep range. Why? Mostly efficiency. Like I said earlier, the amount of reps you use really doesn't matter based on all of the literature, and they're all going to result in pretty much the same stimulus. You're going to want to add weight over time, so that way you're not sitting there doing 45 reps to failure so that way you can save some time and kind of save your joints in the process. So Greg doesn't understand progressive overload. Most people don't. It is not just adding weight and adding reps just randomly in order to produce a different stimulus. You're going to do it with purpose and intentionally under particular circumstances.
You don't have to do set after set after set, and what that can do is actually lead to overtraining. And so doing more than one set, leave that for intermediate and or advanced lifters.
If you say you should be doing 4 sets and you don't see progress, what do? Do you go to 3 sets or do you go to 5 sets?
Exactly. If you start out doing too many sets, for example, 4 sets of each exercise, and you're not making gains, should you do 5, 6? Or lower it to 3 or 2. You would not know. And so the easiest way to do this is to start out with a lower amount of volume and or intensity and increase from there. If you're not making gains going 5 reps from failure, go to 4 reps from failure. You can either do a lot of volume or a lot of intensity. You can't do both. That will surely lead to overtraining.
So here, Greg Doucette is actually correct. You can either do volume or you can do intensity. You cannot do both at the same time. But he actually just debunked himself. He said, if you're not seeing gains and you're going 5 reps from failure, then maybe go 4 reps to failure to try to, stimulate the body and potentially get some gains going. So what's the difference between 5 sets from failure and 4 sets from failure? Intensity of effort. So it's clear that the amount of effort involved in a particular set is what drives the growth stimulus. He literally just said, well, if I'm not seeing gains doing 5 reps short of failure, then maybe do 4 reps short of failure. Why would you do that? Because it increases the demand on the body and the intensity of effort. So it is very clear that volume is not the driver of the growth mechanism. It is clearly intensity. And Greg Doucette just figured that out and answered it himself without even knowing it.
And so if you're a beginner, you could quite simply go to the gym, do 1 warm-up set, and then do 1 hard set. If you're making gains, keep doing what you're doing. But once you stop, at that point, you can add in a second set. And so here is where he's wrong. You will not optimize your training by only doing 1 hard set all the time. It's not going to indefinitely make you stronger.
So here Greg says that you're not going to optimize your training by doing 1 hard set to failure all the time. He's wrong again. I've personally supervised and instructed in person over 20,000 sessions over the last 7 years. That's about 50 to 70 sessions a week over the course of 7 years. All of my clients continue to improve in strength and body composition with just 1 set per exercise. In fact, every time I tried to increase and do more than 1 set, they would regress, lose strength, and start overtraining. Plus, there's a plethora of research that shows the effectiveness of 1 set versus 3 sets performed to failure, and they're equally effective. So he's wrong. By doing additional sets as you get more advanced is simply going to waste your time, and in many cases, it's just going to overtrain you. I think Greg Doucette is probably completely unaware of this research, and I think you should give it a read.
Years ago, I consulted the man himself, 6-time Mr. Olympia, Dorian Yates. 1 set per exercise took him to the pinnacle of bodybuilding.
And so why is he so convinced that 1 set is all you need? Well, because he consulted with Dorian Yates, 6 times Mr. Olympia champion, who did 1 set per exercise. But did you see how hard he did that 1 set? He did that 1 set so hard that 99% of the population could not train that hard. Go to failure, beyond failure, drop set, failure again, drop it again, all out. You think you're going hard on that set? He took it to another level. And so if you go so hard, you bury yourself so deep, only 1 set is all you can do. You don't have the energy, the stamina to keep training like that. And should we also mention Dorian Yates was not natural? Does anyone think he was natural? And so do you really think that training like Dorian Yates for all people will build optimal results? Not everyone will build a Mr. Olympia physique by doing only 1 set.
He said, you'll learn more from 1 conversation with a guy like Mike Menser or myself than a lifetime of reading the bullshit in the magazines.
Now, I certainly wouldn't go that far. I certainly think that I learned more from reading bodybuilding magazines for 10 plus years growing up than I did from any single conversation I had with any IFBB pro. However, bodybuilding magazines can be very confusing as they do present conflicting information. One magazine will say to do it this way, the next magazine say the exact opposite. But there is something to be said by learning from those who have experience. One conversation with Dorian? I don't think so. But what about 100? Imagine learning over and over again from someone with both experience in the gym and the education to back it up. Somebody who's read the literature and can understand it, has applied it on themselves and coached other people.
Greg is using the appeal to authority fallacy since he has a master's in kinesiology, claiming that he knows better, that this can't possibly be true because he studied exercise in college. Well, believe it or not, I've had plenty of clients and students who also studied exercise in college and are completely unaware of even basic physiological principles like Henneman's size principle, actin and myosin sliding filament theory, completely unaware of these basic concepts. Just because you paid a college to teach you utter nonsense doesn't mean you actually know what you're talking about. So granted, Greg does have experience, of course, he's coached people. I've in-person supervised over 20,000 workouts. I highly doubt that Greg is anywhere near that number. Not only that, I have 2 filing cabinets filled with manually recorded workout charts with measurements, improvements in strength. Everything is documented. So I have pretty much a 7-year research project going on that shows and proves that this one set to failure training is extremely effective and will produce the same, if not better results than all this other traditional volume training with 0 chances of injury, since I've literally never, ever had an injury under my supervision in my training studios. So not only are these individuals going to maximize and optimize their muscle growth, strength, and improve all factors of functional ability, they're also going to do so without getting injured, and only about 2 workouts a week. So while I'm sure Greg does have experience, so do I. Sure, Greg's an IFBB pro, but I'm a published fitness model. So if you want to use those as legitimate reasons for why you are correct and everyone else is wrong, well, I've got the same credentials.
Perhaps Coach Greg, what do you think this is? Master's in kinesiology, got all the research, read it all, and I'm an IFBB pro. I practice on myself and on other people. And so when I say things, I'm speaking from experience. It's not just from reading an article in a bodybuilding magazine or some study that may or may not be accurate.
That from the man himself. So take it from me, take it from Mike Menser, take it from Dorian Yates. 1 set is all you need per exercise.
And so we can take it from Dorian Yates, Mike Menser, and this guy, or you can listen to the information I'm going to present right now and you draw your own conclusions. If you're a beginner, 1 set, that is plenty. All you need. When I was 10 years old, started lifting weights, 1 set. That's all I did. Sets of 6. Going back, if I could do it over, I would do a lot higher reps. Didn't know it was following the wider program. But I certainly enjoyed it and I made significant gains. I was 10 years old. As I got older, did more research, I eventually started doing 2 sets. Older again, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And so if you're a complete beginner, 1 set is all you need. But intermediate or advanced lifters, 1 set is not enough. And remember, the harder you train, the harder that set is. If you go to failure, beyond failure, doing drop sets, partials, and so on, supersets, you don't need as many sets. That is true. Dorian and Mike Menser and this guy are not wrong when they say this. However, the research, the literature, it's very clear. And in the real world, most people, the vast majority, 99% plus, are going to make more gains if they're an intermediate or advanced lifter from doing more than 1 set. And so the first set, well, that gives you the best bang for your buck. If you go in the gym, you don't have a lot of time, and you do 1 set, you can make 50% of the gains from just doing that 1 single set. If you go all out to failure, about 5 sets done twice a week seems to be the maximum amount of gains that you can get.
So here Greg shows a pretty meaningless, arbitrary chart on the point of diminishing returns when you start to get to a certain point in volume or number of sets. And obviously there is a point of diminishing returns with training. And he shows that at about 5 sets, which he says are performed to failure, who knows where this came from, maybe they were, maybe they weren't, you start to reach a point of diminishing returns. But he doesn't mention how the set is performed. Most of these sets are performed like this. doesn't really accumulate much fatigue at all. It's fast, it's sloppy, momentum driven, and then they reach failure, which isn't failure. They're simply giving up. Now, if a set is performed like this, slow, controlled, continuous muscular loading, high amounts of tension, high amounts of metabolic stress, and perform all the way to failure, which is not the point where you can't lift the weight and you just set it down. You get to the point where you can no longer complete a repetition in the concentric phase of the movement in perfect form, and you continue to contract for an additional few seconds until your muscles are completely cooked. That's failure. And if you do it that way, there's no way in hell you're going to be able to accumulate 5 sets without overtraining. Also, this particular set performed correctly will probably last anywhere from 45 to 90 seconds, which in terms of time under load or meaningful effort over time is going to be more, or in worst case scenario, equivalent to the amount of time under load accumulated in 5 crappy sets. Why would you take 5 sets to accumulate the stimulus when you can do it in 1 extended duration set? This might be under the belief that reps or mechanical volume, how much the weight goes up and down, has anything to do with the stimulus, but this has been disproven. We're finding that whether or not the weight goes up and down has nothing to do with the stimulus. All that really matters is that you stimulate anabolic pathways through metabolic stress and high amounts of mechanical tension. The weight doesn't even have to move in order to do this, which makes the argument for sets and reps completely, utterly irrelevant.
And by that I mean the first set perhaps gives you 50% of your gains. The second set, 80%. Third set, 90. Fourth set, 95. The fifth set, all of them, 100% of the gains. But what if you keep going? 6, 7, 8 sets to failure and beyond? It's overtraining, you're going to lose progress. Those sets are literally junk volume. They're going to diminish your gains. There's only so much you can handle. If you overtrain, do too many sets at too great of intensity, your body will overtrain and not be able to recover, repair itself, and you will no longer build as much muscle as if you did fewer sets. But Coach Greg, you said 5 or 10 sets. Yes, if you don't train to failure, you're leaving reps in the tank. You need to make up for lacking in intensity with more volume. In that case, 10 sets. The first set might only give you 30% of the gains because it was done half-ass. You didn't push yourself. And so you do the second set, you get 50%, then 65, 70, 75, and so on. And by the time you get to the 10th set, you're at 100%. And so one athlete going all out training harder than last time, doing 5 sets, going to make the same amount of gains as the one training less intensely for 10 sets. And so you decide, you want to go all out, do 5 sets, you want to hold back a little bit, do 10. Depends how you like to train. Me personally, I like doing fewer sets with greater intensity. It's how I like to train. I do the same thing doing cardio. Rather than riding my bike for 2 or 3 hours, I'll ride for an hour. But I go hard. I go hard for 1 hour. I can make the same amount of gains as someone riding at a slower pace for 2 or 3 hours. We refer to this as a training stress score. The greater the intensity, perhaps you're doing HIIT cardio, you're doing intervals, you're going all friggin' out. That offers a greater stimulus incentive for your heart to adapt than doing slower cardio, and so you have to make up for that by riding your bike longer. Same applies in the weights. So if you don't go very hard, you can do more sets, up to 10, done twice a week. You want to go really hard, you can get away with doing only 5 sets, done twice weekly. And so it all comes down to the law of diminished returns. Doing 1 set, the greatest bang for your buck, every set after that is not going to offer as much benefit as the first, but it doesn't mean you should stop at just 1. If you're a beginner, sure, you do not need to do more. Intermediate or advanced, unhappy with your physique, if you're only doing 1 set, you're going to get more gains by adding a second, third, fourth, fifth set. And even in exercise physiology in university over 25 years ago, I remember studying this, and it was determined that 3 to 5 sets was optimal when done to failure. In comparison to 1, this is with trained subjects. They were not IFBB pros, but trained athletes. 3 to 5 sets, not 1. And so if you do 1 set and you stop, you're not going to get as much progress as 3 to 5. And so if you watch this video and you've been training 3 to 5 sets and you're thinking, oh, no wonder I'm not Mr. Olympia. No wonder I'm not as big as Dorian. I know what I'll do. I'll decrease my volume to 1 set from 5. You're not going to get bigger. You might not lose any muscle because you don't need as much volume to keep the muscles that you already built. About 1/3 the volume, all you need. And so please don't watch this video and think, oh, I only need to do 1 set. No, if you're a beginner and you're doing 5, 6 sets, you're going all out, you can do less. You try doing 1. But for intermediate and advanced lifters, trust me, the majority of people are not training hard enough. And so rather than watching this video and thinking, I'm going to train less, train harder. Harder than last time. Progressive overload. Hope you learned something. Ending it here.
That's my thought on Greg Doucette's criticism or analysis of 1 set to failure training. And the reason he just doesn't get it is kind of like the reason most of the fitness industry doesn't get it. They don't even know how to perform a set properly. They don't really know what the stimulus is for muscle growth. They don't understand time under meaningful tension or time under load as the proper definition of volume. And they also don't understand what it means to actually train to true momentary muscle failure rather than just giving up when the set gets hard. Now, if an individual like Greg went through a real high intensity training workout, it would make complete utter sense. Just like when I took Elliot Holes through a 1 set to failure workout, a true high intensity training workout, he converted immediately because he understood it, he got it. So the biggest problem is a lot of people, when they hear 1 set to failure, they're pretty much just comparing it to the way they do a set, which is wrong, sloppy, short set duration, not even achieving muscle failure. And if you do the set properly, and if you understand the actual physiology of the sequential and orderly recruitment of motor units based on the intensity of the contraction, it is clear, evident, and obvious. 1 set is all that is required to optimally stimulate muscle to grow in strength and size. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, bell notification icon so you can be informed when I debunk more fitness myths and give you the real science behind training. And if you want to apply the real science behind training to your own workout, go to goldenerasystem.com, order my Golden Era Physique System. This will be the best workout and the only workout you'll ever need. You'll see drastic gains in size, strength, cardiovascular efficiency, and reduction in body fat with just 2 30-minute workouts a week. Go ahead, try it. goldenerasystem.com. This will be the best workout you ever did, the only workout you'll ever need.